Hello everyone, welcome to the Hindu analysis for 23rd February 2021. Let us start with the first article today. Xi may visit India for BRICS summit. So at the tail end of this year, India is hosting a physical summit of BRICS. BRICS is Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. These leaders meet annually in summits. Due to coronavirus pandemic, the earlier one was held through virtually. But at the end of this year, India is in the hopes that we are going to conduct a physical summit where we will be discussing about varied of topics regarding these particular nations. But due to the current situation between India and China in Ladakh, everybody was of the idea that or opinion that India might not extend its invitation to the Chinese president. But yesterday, the Chinese government came and said that border crisis might not impact the meet, meaning Mr. Xi will be visiting India to attend the BRICS summit physically. This visit is coming after whatever has happened or whatever is currently happening in Ladakh. See, the Chinese and the Indian government have no trust due to a long history of the trust being broken by the Chinese side. We'll learn in the next few articles how the trust has been broken by the Chinese government and how badly they have been behaving with the Indian side for the past few decades. But as of yesterday, though the disengagement is happening in the Ladakh area, particularly as I said earlier, our most important aspect is the 𝑑epsang plains, because since 1963, China has been slowly occupying the 𝑑epsang plains. And as of yesterday's report, the Chinese side has clearly said that they are not going to vacate the 𝑑epsang plains. 𝑑epsang plains are very important for us strategically, but though this much tension is going on between both sides and there is no trust between the both sides because of the Chinese actions, whether it may be Galwan clashes, whether it may be earlier scuffles between Indian side and the Chinese side in the Pangong Lake area, in the other patrolling area, particularly in the case of Arunachal Pradesh. This summit is very important to us, and there is a lot of criticism on the government that why are you inviting your aggressor here. But we have to see how this de-escalation and de-engagement takes place. Yesterday I told you about de-escalation, meaning the troops from both sides should move back to their peacetime positions, meaning during peacetime wherever these troops were stationed, now they must move back to that location. That is what de-escalation means. As of now, there is only disengagement in one area, that is the Pangong Lake area. But one of the developments is this is the first time these two heads of the states of India and China will be meeting after Galwan clashes. We have to see how this will develop. If you remember, our defense minister and our external minister met their equal counterparts of the Chinese government in Russia on the sidelines of Russian summit. But when Mr. Xi and Mr. Narendra Modi will meet, we have to see what they discuss, or even we are not sure whether this will happen or not. Coming to the next article, dealing with the bigger neighbor, China. So in this article, the author goes through a series of agreements and how the Chinese and Indian side have been engaging in negotiations and actions over few decades since the border crisis between India and China started. It starts pre-1962 and it goes well into the 21st century. So we have to understand the contention between the disagreements regarding border area and some other aspects between India and China did not start last year. They have been happening and they have had huge impact on our foreign policy and on the Chinese side of the foreign policy, because when you look at the facts of the case, particularly with relations to India and China, on the economic level we both were having cordial relations, but since the border issue has been brewing, they went and occupied the Aksai. All these things were happening. We tried to resolve these border issues through negotiations and through talks, but Chinese never gave any leeway to us to further the talks or further our position. But recent actions where Indian army has started to stand up to the Chinese aggression by checking their advances, The first and core relation between India and China has always been of economic. When you look at the relation between India and China from the outside, it would look like they are very cordial, even though there is an underlying border dispute issue. Though there is a border dispute between the two countries, we never allowed it to impact directly on the economic relationships that we share with China. Not only on the economic level, we also had a relationship on people to people level basis. But the distance between China and India has been growing since a few decades back because of the aggressive stance that China took. Then came 2020, that is the Galwan clashes on June 15th. This changed the entire dynamic of our relationship with China. We started imposing sanctions on them, we started blocking their apps. What was the reason? See, during the entire post 1962 era till now, that is 2021, China and India had a lot of negotiations in terms of our border dispute. There were fightings in between the Chinese troops and Indian troops. The Chinese troops were aggressive towards our. They abducted few soldiers post Galwan, where 10 soldiers were captured and kept as prisoners for 10 days, where we negotiated for their release. So this contention changed the entire dynamic, right? They were aggressive earlier, they became more aggressive post 2020, meaning in the beginning of when they started encroaching into our territory or our perception of LAC in the Pangong Lake area and in other areas. They started testing our defenses in Doklam. They never thought that India would stand. So when Doklam standoff happened, that set in motion certain actions from the Chinese side, where their entire approach to the Indian foreign policy or Indian border dispute took an 180-degree shift. Post Doklam, they have been more aggressive. They started building structures, they started building infrastructure at the border. The difference between Indian border infrastructure and the Chinese border infrastructure is the pace in which it was developed. If you look at the disengagement from the Pangong Lake area, from North and South Pangong Lake area, one thing that you have to understand is the speed at which they acquired those areas and the speed with which they disengaged from the areas. This shows that they had good infrastructure and it was very well planned. So you cannot say that it was the aggression shown by the Chinese side was done in a single day. The Indian government stance is the Chinese side did not occupy any territory, but when you look at satellite imagery, when you look at the ground reports, there is a clear encroachment of our territory. Post Galwan, things changed quickly, but since 1993 we have arrived at a large number of agreements between India and China to solve this border dispute. China still claims Arunachal Pradesh to be their own. China still claims large part of almost all Bhutan to be their own country. China claims half of Nepal as their own territory. But we wanted peace and tranquility, and we wanted to promote foster a good neighborhood with our neighboring country China, which turned out to be a good economic superpower in its own right over few decades. So what was the inspiration for us to try peace and tranquility agreements with China? See, China had border issues with both Russia and with Russia also. So when China and Russia had border disputes, Gorbachev, who was the premier of Russia, that is USSR, Soviet Union, they had agreements with China. They started these agreements called confidence building measure agreements, where they said that we are going to build confidence upon one another through certain actions, and we are going to ensure that this border dispute is solved. And through certain agreements and through certain confidence building measures, Russia and China were able to solve their dispute. But there ends the difference. This inspired India also to approach a similar tactic to towards China in terms of settling the border dispute. So we also, over the period, that is, we started with September 7th, 1993, we had a first agreement of confidence as a part of confidence building measure. That is, the agreement is called Agreement on the Maintenance of Peace and Tranquility Along the Line of Actual Control in the India-China border areas. So the first point, or the most important point of this agreement, was that both sides will abide by the line of actual control. That was the first setting stone of an border dispute settlement. We said we are going to recognize either sides of LAC and we are going to abide by that LAC. Then came the second agreement in November of 1996. This agreement between the government of the Republic of India and the government of People's Republics of China on confidence building measures in the military fielding along the line of actual control in India-China borders. We were all these times, right, we started in 1993, then the second agreement came in 1996. In between time, we ensured that we abided by the agreement we signed with China in 1993. We continued to implement confidence building measures with the military, using the military along the line of control, and we tried to maintain peace and tranquility in areas along the LAC. We didn't shell, we didn't shoot, we didn't bomb, we didn't try to encroach any territory. And if we had any differences in these agreements, it was agreed upon that nobody will fire a gun. Whenever we are going to conduct patrolling in our perception of LAC, we are not going to use our weapons, or we are going to leave our weapons. And we started having this concept of flag meetings. We had this concept of having commander level meetings, just to ensure and sort out any differences that may arise on the border area, so that we can solve and nip the misconceptions in the bud itself. Then came the agreement in April 11th of 2005, where agreement again between the government of India, that is Republic of India, and the government of People's Republics of China on the political parameters and guiding principles for the settlement of India-China boundary question. Again, in this, neither side agreed that we are going to use we are not going to use our military capabilities, or we are going to respect their military strengths, and we should not attack one another. Again, it was a confidence building measure. Then came the most egregious one, where in 2012, India-China Agreement on Establishment of Working Mechanism for Consultation and Coordination on India-China Border Affairs. In this agreement, neither side again reiterated that we shall use or threaten to use force against the other by any means or seek unilateral military superiority. See, this was signed in 2012. But since then, China has been acting unilaterally through way of military occupations on certain areas in LAC. They are slowly encroaching unilaterally. They are trying to change the status quo. They signed in 2012 that they are not going to conduct any unilateral military actions, but they have been. The intensity of unilateral actions has increased since the signing of agreement. They are doing the exact opposite of what the agreement talks about. And the last one came in 2013. This agreement between the government of the Republic of India and the government of People's Republics of China on border defense cooperation. This was a final, and after this nothing happened. Why the agreement between China and Russia succeeded in terms of border dispute settlement, and why the similar agreements between India and China are failing? The primary difference comes in Russia was a superpower. Russia was a superpower when it was negotiating with China. China was relatively a small country in front of the Russian superpower and Russian military might. And Russia was really interested in solving the border dispute. It was not the Chinese negotiation, nor the Chinese military strength, nor the Chinese economic might that brought Russia to the negotiations table. It was Russia's military might, Russia's superpower, economic superpower then compared to that of China, and Russia's interest in solving the border dispute that brought the Chinese side to the negotiation table. Russia was okay with negotiating with China and saying that let us solve this border dispute. Now come to India and China. China is an economic superpower right now. That is the true fact. Let us set aside the military aspect of it. But the third aspect, is China interested in solving the border dispute with India right now? No. China is not even interested in settling the border dispute through the way of negotiations. When you consider China and Russia border disputes, Russia was interested in solving the problem through negotiations, and Russia was willing to give some concessions to China in the way of area. They said, okay, let us settle the border dispute. Though we will lose some territory, we will gain somewhere. It will be equitable. Okay. When you come to the negotiation tactics adopted by Chinese in India and China negotiations is, China is saying that whatever we have occupied till now, leave it to us. When China and Russia were negotiating, it was done on an equitable basis with the respect of with Russia giving respect to China. But here China is not giving equitable respect to India. China is acting as a bully and saying that we have already occupied the territory, we are going to keep it, and we want more. This doesn't bode well for India, and it doesn't give a chance to India to regain its own territory back from the hands of China. That is the biggest issue. In Russia and China, Russia was considered the concerns of Chinese side. In terms of India and China, China is acting as a bully and saying to India, give up your territory, we are not bothered. That is the only way this border issue is going to be settled. Even the academicians, even the experts, even the foreign policy experts of the Chinese universities, Chinese think tanks say that if India doesn't budge, meaning if India doesn't give its territory to China, incidents that are happening right now will repeat again and with much more seriousness and intensity. So they are threatening our sovereignty here. They are threatening our institutions here. That is why all these agreements from 1993, from 1996 to 2012, 2013, these agreements never worked, because in negotiations, China was asking for our territory. They were never interested in settling the border dispute. They don't recognize the McMahon line, they don't recognize Arunachal Pradesh, and they don't recognize the state of Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and the Union Territory of Ladakh. So when one side is very much interested in destruction of the other side, negotiations cannot happen here. So that is the reason that India and China, talks between India and China have always failed. And see, we signed 5 agreements between 1993 and 2013. Not a single one came to fruition. Neither it was not the lacking of the government, or neither party was interested, because neither party never trusted one another. We were very clear from the get-go that the Chinese were interested in taking territory from our side. So we never trusted them. As I said, China as a superpower is trying to act as a bully. So this future relationship that we intend to have with China, that is in terms of Indo-Sino relation, is always going to be problematic and uncertain. Coming to the next article, railways stung by IT breaches. So recently the Ministry of Railways has roped in the Center for Development of Advanced Computing (CDAC) to educate its officials on internet ethics, cyber hygiene, and best practices in the use of IT equipment, including mobile phones. Indian Railways has been the first point of attack for hackers for a long time. In the recent years, we had so many incidents where the hackers were trying to exploit the IRCTC's ticket booking system and other IT infrastructure of Indian Railways. And when the investigation was done by Railways and some other outside experts, they realized that most of the attacks were happening due to human error. They were exploiting the employees of Railways based on their lack of clarity on how cyber attacks takes place and cyber ethics in general. To prevent that, or to prevent improper handling of the IT assets by the personnel, that is employees of Railways, Railway Ministry has roped in the CDAC to teach these railway employees how to have cyber ethics and how to maintain cyber hygiene when you are dealing with IT infrastructure of railways. So this is part of their national cyber security strategy, where they are trying to enhance the understanding of their personnel in IT cyber warfare or cyber security designs. So it also goes well within our Digital India initiative, where we are trying to digitize everything. In the future, if the employees are aware of how cyber attacks takes place, what is the cyber etiquettes that they have to follow to ensure nobody is taking advantage of their infrastructure, this goes a long way. Coming to the next article, 70,221 crore reserved for domestic buying. So our defense minister in a press conference yesterday announced that in the allocated budget, half of it, that is 70,000 crores, will be utilized to be will be reserved for allocation for domestic purchases. Meaning, in the 70,000 crore, they are going to use that money to buy from domestic manufacturers and domestic industries. And he also announced that they are going to come out with a second and negative list of items that could be procured only locally by the services, and it would allow negative import list, meaning services, that is Indian Army, Indian Air Force, Indian Navy cannot import this material or items in that list from outside. They have to resource them from locally, again boosting local domestic defense manufacturing and research, because once Indian armed forces are interested in Indian manufacturing, automatically companies will start spending on R&D to meet the demands of our armed forces. And one more addition to that was a deal for light combat helicopters was also set to be signed shortly, while the deal for light utility helicopters was expected by August of 2022. LUH and LCH are being developed by Hindustan Aeronautical Limited. One is an attack helicopters in similar terms to Apache helicopters of Boeing. The second one is troop carrier, where they are using to deploy them in high altitude regions. So this is again an initiative towards kickstart our own R&D and our own manufacturing sector, manufacturing in terms of defense procurement in India. And he also announced that they are going to support startups by channelizing 1,000 crores during 21 to 22 fiscal year for procurement from startups. They are going to procure either technology or machinery itself, items, defense items itself, from startups by allocating exclusively 1,000 crores to be acquired from startups. This will again kickstart an enthusiasm in startups, where they'll try to infuse more capital into R&D and certainly try to meet the demands of armed forces, and everything will happen in-house, that is in India. This would be done through a concept called Innovation for Defense Excellence Initiative. So through Innovation for Defense Excellence Initiative, the government is going to allocate 1,000 crores from the budget specifically to used for procurement from startups. The second thing to remember is they are going to channelize 70,000 crores for local procurement. We have already one negative import list. Now they are going to come out with a second negative import list. Coming to the next article, Covaxin uptake below 1% in 12 states and UTs. Since the beginning, vaccine hesitancy has been plaguing India, particularly in terms of the vaccine Covaxin. It was the least preferred vaccine because nobody trusted the vaccine. It goes on to show that people are still hesitant to take vaccines, particularly the Covaxin, which was developed by Bharat Biotech. It is an Indian vaccine. People are not still sure to receive these vaccines. They are still preferring the Covishield developed by the Serum Institute of India, which was based on Oxford AstraZeneca's vaccine. Coming to the next article, China firm slays third-party interference in Lanka project. So a Chinese company won a bid to build 3 renewable energy plants in islands that are 50 kilometers off the coast of Tamil Nadu recently. The Chinese firm wanted to build the renewable energy plants near these islands. This contract was awarded to this Chinese company by the Sri Lankan government. after raising some certain concerns from the Indian side, and after cancelling the ETC project by the Sri Lankan government, few days back Indian government came out and assured that we will provide a 50 million grant to you to build the project. Please don't take any loans from the Asian Development Bank. Earlier, the project was being developed and constructed by a Chinese company through a loan taken out from the Asian Development Bank to Sri Lanka. Now, India said that don't take that loan, we will give you 50 million and use this money to build that plant. Coming to the next article, growth momentum needs to be strengthened. Whatever the growth that we are experiencing or the green shoots that we are seeing in the economic recovery of overall Indian economy, we have to strengthen it. That is what our RBI chief was saying. The MPC was conducted yesterday, and in that MPC they decided that they are going to continue with an accommodative stance that they have taken post coronavirus crisis. In this MPC, the accommodative stance is they are not going to change the policy rate of RBI on a stable percentage. They are not going to increase it or decrease. In order to see that whatever the economic growth that has been happening in the past few months, the RBI has adopted an accommodative stance, meaning they are not going to change the policy rate percentages, and they want to ensure that whatever the growth has happening, they want to ensure the momentum at which it is happening, and they want to see the economy come out of its slump. Thank you. Have a nice day.